So let's look at this thing just a little bit more before we move on. So how can I make this easier to reuse in a wider range of problems? Well, what are the things that are specific about this problem? Well, this particular prompt is a direct result of limits that I have in the database. So I only have data from 1915 through 2014. And so I need to validate numbers in that range for this particular problem. And then that prompt is reflected here as well. Whoops. And I just broke my code by clicking in the wrong place. So let me make sure it still works. Okay, good. All right. That limits the usefulness of this code. And sure, I could copy the thing and then edit the range, but anytime you find yourself doing something like that, stop and ask yourself, can I make this more general by passing in parameters? So the program that's calling this is going to know the details of what a legal range is. That shouldn't be something that's inside of getYear. That should be something that the program is telling getYear. So it should be a parameter. So what I'm going to do, instead of just having getYear, is I'm going to pass in minYear and maxYear. And then I'm going to use minYear here and maxYear there. And then for these things here too, I could just use parameters. So like I can use, let's use a formatted string here. And then I'll put a curly bracket, minYear, and a curly bracket, maxYear. And then we'll do the same thing here. And the same thing here. And this will be a formatted string, which I'm using for my input. And should work exactly the same. So I'm going to go ahead and run it now. Oops, and I forgot to change my call. So now I need to supply the minYear and the maxYear. So select year between 1915 and 2014. If I type something that isn't a number, that works. If I type something that's out of the range, it must be between 1915 and 2014. And if I type something that's valid, it works exactly the same as it did before. Okay, so just by making that one fairly simple change, instead of hard coding the range, I'm passing it in as parameters to this function. I have made this much easier to use. Am I done? Well, I could stop here, but I could also do, well, can I make this even more useful or put more of this code in something that's reusable? Well, I could do something like this. Why don't I do like getInteger? And this thing's going to take a prompt, which is a question to ask the user. And I'll just do that for now. And then my loop is going to be something like this while true. And then val is going to be in a try except. So val is equal to int input prompt. And then if I get here, that means I didn't have an error, which means that they typed a valid integer. So I can return int prompt. And that's going to be the return value, return result from this function call. Otherwise, if I do get an error, it's going to be a value error. So I can do except value error. Then I want to write an error message. So let's print, please enter a whole number, exclamation point. And then I'm automatically going to loop back to the top. And so this is going to repeat until the user enters a valid value. And I don't have to repeat that thing. So good. All right. So here's a simple thing that gets an integer. and then getYear with minYear and maxYear, I can get rid of this try thing here because that's going to be handled in getInteger. So getInteger is going to take a prompt string and it's going to return a whole number. And then I check to see if it's in the right range. And let me restructure this a little bit just because I like it better if it's positive. So if the year is in the range, then I'm going to return it. Otherwise, I'm going to print my error message, and then that's it. So this code does the same thing, but I think it's easier because it's shorter. And yeah, I don't know. That's enough just because it's shorter. So now I have a reusable getInteger function that I can use anytime I want to get a whole number, and a getYear function that takes a range and does the right thing as well. So I have two reusable functions for the price of one. And should work the same. So 1962 M works. And then let's try something out of the range and something that isn't. Oops. So I broke that. So let me go ahead and figure out why I broke that. So if year is greater than or equal, so return year. Let me put a breakpoint, run it under the debugger. So I'm going to step over this thing. I'm going to enter 100. Oh, that should be an and. That should be and there. Okay, so I broke the logic, but now let's try it. So if I type 100, it works, and 2000, 20,000 works, and 2014 should accept that, and it does. And then we'll try female. And here are female babies from 2014. Okay. All right, so this is contributed to code reuse because now I have more specific functions that I can pick up. And in fact, if I think about this a little tiny bit, well, isn't this just asking for a whole number in a range rather than a year? I mean, maybe this could be just like get integer in range. And then I do like a min val and a max val. And then please select a year between blah, blah. That can be a prompt string that I pass in. And then I just pass that prompt directly into getYear. And then this thing here, I'm going to double click on it to select the whole thing. Then I'm going to right click, refactor, rename. And then rename code occurrences. Let's make this be val for value. And then this is min val, and this is max val. And then this thing here, well, let's pass that in as a parameter as well. So error message. So there's a prompt, there's an error message, a min val and a max val. And now I have something that I can use anytime I want to get a whole number in a range. So I'm going to use it here. So this is going to take a prompt string. Please enter a year between 1914 and 1915. So there's my prompt string. And this is getting a little long, so I'm going to do this. And then my error message is going to be year must be between 1915 and 2014 exclamation point. And then I have my min value and my max value. And then this is going to be getIntegerInRange. Okay, so maybe that's overkill because getYear was working just fine. But anytime I need a whole number or a whole number in a range, I have functions to do that now. So I've reduced the amount of work I need to do later on. So let's just make sure it still works. Here's a bad number. Here's something that isn't a number. Here's a good number. And here's a gender.